In the previous part, the Clutter family was murdered, and the quiet town of Holcomb was left in fear and disbelief. Now, we turn to what followed, the investigation that would slowly uncover the truth. The discovery of the Clutter murders sent shockwaves far beyond Holcomb. Local law enforcement was overwhelmed. A crime of this magnitude was something the town had never faced. The Kansas Bureau of Investigation, known as the KBI, was called in to assist. Leading the case was Agent Alvin Dewey. Dewey was experienced, methodical, and deeply affected by the crime. He took the murders personally, not just as a professional duty, but as a moral responsibility. The Clutters were not just victims, they were neighbors, parents, and children whose lives had been taken without reason. The investigation began with a simple question. Who would want to harm the Clutter family? There was no obvious motive. Herbert Clutter had no known enemies. He was respected, fair to his workers, and active in the community. No valuables were missing that could explain a robbery. There was no sign of forced rage or personal revenge. The crime made no sense. And that made it even more terrifying. Investigators interviewed everyone. Neighbors, friends, farmhands, school teachers, clergy, anyone who had ever crossed paths with the Clutters. Rumors spread quickly. Some suspected drifters. Others blamed outsiders. Some even began to suspect one another. Holcomb became a town filled with whispers and fear. People locked their doors at night. Shotguns appeared behind counters. Trust slowly disappeared. Agent Dewey worked day and night, following leads that led nowhere. The pressure grew. The case was receiving national attention, and yet there were no solid suspects. The first major break came from an unexpected place. Inside the Kansas State Penitentiary. A prisoner named Floyd Wells heard about the murders and recognized the details immediately. He had once shared a cell with Dick Hickok. Wells remembered Dick talking about Herbert Clutter. He remembered Dick saying that Clutter kept a safe full of cash and that he planned to rob him after his release. The plan matched the crime perfectly. Wells reported this information to the prison authorities. Soon after, the KBI received the tip. For the first time, the investigation had direction. Agent Dewey focused on Dick Hickok. Records showed that Dick had recently been released from prison. He had access to a car. He had left the area shortly after the murders. His background fit the profile. Perry Smith's name surfaced soon after. The two men had been seen together. Their criminal histories overlapped. The net began to tighten. Meanwhile, Dick and Perry were far from Kansas. They traveled across the country, spending recklessly and living on the edge. Dick pretended nothing had changed. Perry grew quieter, more unstable. Perry suffered from nightmares. He dreamed of the Clutters. He dreamed of blood. He dreamed of a giant yellow bird that attacked him, a recurring symbol of his inner torment. The crime had not brought him peace. It had only deepened his pain. In late December 1959, authorities caught up with them in Las Vegas. They were arrested quietly. There was no chase. No resistance. Just two men who knew, deep down, that this moment was inevitable. They were returned to Kansas in handcuffs. The town of Holcomb watched as the men accused of destroying their sense of safety were brought back to face justice. The interrogations began. Dick was confident at first. He denied everything. He joked. He believed he could talk his way out. Perry was different. He struggled to maintain his composure. His emotions surfaced unpredictably. He was haunted by guilt, fear, and anger. Over time, the truth emerged. Piece by piece. Detail by detail. The lies collapsed. Perry Smith eventually confessed. His confession was detailed and disturbing. He described the night of the murders with clarity that left investigators shaken. Dick Hickok continued to shift blame, minimizing his role and pointing toward Perry. But the evidence was overwhelming. Both men were charged with the murders of all 4 members of the Clutter family. For Agent Dewey, there was relief, but no victory. The case was solved, but nothing could undo what had been done. 4 lives were gone. A town was forever changed. And the long road to justice had only just begun. This brings us to the end of Part 3. In the next part, we will examine the trial, the psychological contrast between Dick and Perry, and how the legal system handled a crime that had no clear motive and no true explanation.